Well, General Prabowo is the most notorious massacre general in Indonesia, and he's also the general who was closest to the U.S. as he was carrying out his mass killings, abductions of activists, and systematic tortures. He was also the son-in-law of the former dictator of Indonesia, General Suharto. Prabowo described himself to me as the American's fair-haired boy. He mused about becoming a fascist dictator. He told me Indonesia is not ready for democracy. And he described in detail how he received training from the U.S. at Fort Benning and Fort Bragg, how when in 1998 Suharto was falling, and he, Prabowo, was in the process of kidnapping activists, he was in regular consultation with the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. In fact, Prabowo told me that he reported to the U.S. DIA at least once a week. He also described how under a Pentagon program known as JSET, Joint Combined Exchange and Training, he, General Prabowo, brought fully armed troops into Indonesia on at least 41 occasions. And Pentagon documents back up Prabowo's account. According to the general and those Pentagon documents, while the U.S. troops were in Indonesia, after, as the Pentagon put it, Prabowo opened the door to them, they started doing reconnaissance and making plans, contingency plans, for a possible future U.S. invasion of Indonesia, as Prabowo put it to me, for the invasion contingency. So these armed U.S. troops, which Prabowo brought in to Java and Sumatra and other places in Indonesia, were laying the groundwork for a future U.S. invasion if the U.S. chose to do that. This is particularly interesting since Prabowo styles himself, as he's running for president now, as a nationalist. And he attacks anyone who opposes him as an antek asing, a foreign lackey, when in fact he is the one who was closest to the U.S., who was helping the U.S. plan for an invasion, and who in more recent years helped to kill a workers' rights lawsuit against Freeport-McMoran, the American mining giant, which is stripping the hills and forests of de facto occupied West Papua. And he is the general, most importantly, who led many of the massacres in East Timor after the Indonesian army invaded with the green light from President Gerald Ford and Henry Kissinger. In one case, in the village of Kraras, Prabowo and his forces killed hundreds of fleeing civilians. He later was involved in other massacres and directing assassinations of political activists in Aceh and West Papua. And now he may be on the verge of assuming the presidency. He's tried for many years to seize power. He's tried multiple coup attempts, but this time he has the backing of the incumbent government, the incumbent civilian president, Joko Widodo Jokowi, and the state apparatus is being put behind General Prabowo. The army and police are going out and intimidating poor people at the neighborhood level, telling them that if they don't vote for Prabowo, the authorities will know about it and they'll be in trouble. People are being threatened with poor people are being threatened with having their government rations of rice and cooking oil cut off if they don't vote for Prabowo. Academics who recently spoke out against this use of state power to push this general into office are now being visited and intimidated by the police. And last Wednesday, there was a meeting that included Army generals and intelligence officials, where they discussed a plan to, if necessary, do voter fraud to push General Prabowo over the 50% threshold he will need in order to win in tomorrow's election. It's a three-candidate election, and if he gets over the 50% threshold and gets a sufficient number of votes in the provinces outside Java, he will automatically become the president-elect. And the plan that was discussed at that meeting among those senior military and intelligence officials was that there was an existing plan to do fraud if necessary, to push the general over that threshold and impose him on Indonesia as their new president, really their new ruler.